Phil Foden bagged a hat-trick in last night's game for Man City. However, I was one of those managers that sold him before game week 31. So we're going to be talking about whether he is essential and he needs to come back into our teams, as well as my game week 32 transfer plans and, of course, captaincy dilemma. So as always, make sure you drop a like on the video, aim for 200, and as always, make sure you do smash that subscribe button. So enough waffling, let's get into today's video. Well, this has been a tough start to the game week as a manager who sold Phil Foden. You can see in the bottom of the screen here, my two free transfers going into game week 31 was selling Phil Foden for Mo Salah, which I was more than happy with before the deadline, and selling Watkins for Darwin Núñez, which I did have a few question marks about. Now, if you're one of those managers that sold Phil Foden, then you are in the right place here, because of course, off the back of a hat-trick, it is painful when you see things like that. But I do want to offer a little bit of positivity in this situation, because for me, it was a deliberation between Phil Foden and Son. And when we were having the discussion, we considered what would the player do between game weeks 31 and 33. That was the period where we were going to own those players. Now, of course, Phil Foden is dominating right now with the hat-trick compared to Son's two-pointer. And realistically, Foden probably is going to outscore Son now over those 3 game weeks. But I don't think all hope is lost yet. Son still has a brilliant home game against Nottingham Forest and then an away game against Newcastle, which on paper doesn't sound great, but I actually think that is a really good game for him. So my advice is this: yes, it's terrible right now, but actually judge it after game week 33, as it could actually be a situation where Foden gets benched in one of the games, Son gets a brace, and all of a sudden the points are very, very close between the two. But I get it. It's very painful right now. So taking a look at the team, it was devastating watching Dubravka concede that penalty. He was this close to not only saving it, but being top bonus points. So that was a huge swing this game week. Thankfully, the Arsenal double clean sheet is coming clutch. Saliba with that 1 bonus point being an added factor. Pedro Porro 2-pointer, probably one of the worst transfers I have had in a long time, and he's kind of just sat in the team and haven't really thought about him. So he is a desperate transfer out, but maybe not this week. Looking at the midfielders, again, we spoke about Son, bit of a disaster, but Saka was the one which we didn't see coming. We saw him pictured in training. We all thought he would feature. He ended up getting 0 minutes. And because of that, as you can see, I have currently auto-subbed in Garnacho, who is away against Chelsea tonight. So I'm hoping that could be the ultimate differential. I'm a Chelsea fan, but if it finishes 4-3 Chelsea and Garnacho scores a hat-trick, I wouldn't mind that at all. So I'm praying for a miracle. Obviously, we have Salah captaincy still to play. That is going to be a big factor this game week, and Cole Palmer at home against Man United. And in terms of the front three, another big surprise was not only Erling Haaland being benched, but not coming on. To be honest with you, I was more than happy with that. With Zabanye being second sub, he will now auto sub in for his 7-pointer. So I'm kind of happy with that. Solanke with the 2-pointer, quite disappointing. But the big one is Darwin Núñez. When we look at it, yes, it was Son versus Phil Foden for Salah. But the other transfer combination that I did have was actually not bringing in Darwin Núñez and simply selling Garnacho, downgrading Pedro Porro, and downgrading Ollie Watkins to a Mateta. So the big one is Darwin Núñez. If he gets a 2-pointer, he doesn't come on or anything, then this has been an absolute disaster. However, if Darwin Núñez was to score a brace against Sheffield United, then all of a sudden, this is not a bad move at all, because his ownership will mean that we'll get a lot of those points. So, to conclude, 28 points once the auto subs come in, a decent red arrow because of Phil Foden, but I'm hoping if Liverpool deliver tonight, it will be a green arrow. So let's take a look at my team going into game week 32 and, of course, the transfers that I'm prioritising. So I think right now, off the back of that hat-trick, we're all probably sat here thinking, do we just buy Phil Foden back into our FPL teams? Now, of course, selling him right now does not look like a clever move, but we want to look at the fixtures right now coming up, because it's very easy to look at the Premier League fixtures and see Villa, Palace, Luton, and they look fantastic. But we also need to remember what is in between those fixtures. And that was a big factor why I personally sold Phil Foden. So, of course, they played last night against Aston Villa, dominant performance. They then have Crystal Palace away on the Saturday, which is the lunchtime kickoff. Now, we need to remind ourselves, Kevin De Bruyne sat out for the whole game. Haaland sat out for the whole game. So I don't really know whether that means Phil Foden plays or not. But the big things we need to remember, the return of the Champions League. Real Madrid on the Tuesday, so 3 days rest, then they are back at it in the first leg away. Then they have Luton at home on the Saturday, followed by the second leg of the Champions League on the Wednesday. So I will be astonished if Phil Foden was to play the Crystal Palace game and the Luton game. Now, of course, of all the people, he probably is the one who is athletically a bit able to play all of these games, but I will be very, very surprised if he does. I think the Luton game could be a rotational game for him. And all of a sudden, if we have Son play against Forest and play against Newcastle, he could potentially equal that of Phil Foden. Now, my advice is this. If you're in a position where obviously you've seen Phil Foden's haul and you just want him in your team, get him in. There is no denying he's an unbelievable option. The fixtures are fantastic, and I do expect him to play the majority of the games. But if you're in a position like me where you're wildcarding in game week 35 and you sold him in game week 31, I think we just make our bed and sleep in it and accept that we've made our moves, we don't go back there, and have him as a priority move in our game week 35 wildcard teams in preparation for the back end of the season. But let me know in the comments, are you looking to bring Foden straight back into your teams? Personally, I'm just going to avoid. Okay, so as I mentioned, my chip strategy right now is to wildcard in game week 35 to prepare my team for the announcement of game week 36 double and the game week 37 double. So I am absolutely locked in on that wildcard strategy, which means I'm only looking at 3 game weeks, which I kind of like in FPL because it really makes us narrow down the teams and players that we want to target. So I filtered the teams of relevance on the fixtures that you can see on your screens here, because I think there's no other teams that we really need to consider, especially those that don't double in game week 34. So a few notes that I've made here before we deep dive into the fixtures. Liverpool players are going to be rotation risks. Jota, Trent, Alisson are nearing a return. I don't think they're going to be available for tonight's game against Sheffield United, but there could be a chance that maybe the likes of Jota may get some minutes in game week 32. If not game week 32, then game week 33 at home against Crystal Palace is a bit of an issue in terms of minutes. So if you're in the market right now and you're buying a Connor Bradley or you're buying a Kelleher, I would hold your horses because rotation is going to happen in that team. Pickford is a viable option. I know Everton have been woeful right now, but when you see the fixtures at the top there, Burnley at home, Chelsea away, I don't think it's a terrible fixture at all, and then a double game week with both being at home. Look, am I expecting clean sheets from Pickford? Probably not, but when I look at the fixtures for all teams, I don't see many clean sheets at all, especially for those budget goalkeepers. So I look at it and think, which goalkeeper has the potential for a clean sheet, which I would argue Pickford does in game week 32, has the potential for save points and bonus points, and Pickford ticks all of those boxes. So if you're looking for a goalkeeper this game week, and I potentially might be, then Pickford I think is the number one priority. Second probably would be someone like a Henderson at Palace, but with Man City and Liverpool, you can see why I'm more tempted to go towards Pickford as the goalkeeper. Next up, I would avoid Palace until game week 34. You can see on the fixtures here, they probably had the best double in game week 34, but prior to that, the fixtures are awful. So the only way I would bring in a Palace player is if it was maybe a budget enabler as part of a transfer combination. So for example, maybe you're bringing in Mateta to free up some funds to bring in someone like a Mo Salah. I don't mind you doing that in game week 32, but if you're looking to bring in a Palace player to start, I wouldn't be looking to do it until the physical double in 34. And last up, the impact of European football. We discussed it with Man City. Between that Luton game that you can see here, Palace, then they'll have the Real Madrid game, Luton, and then the following Real Madrid game. There is going to be imminent rotation in these teams, and that is going to apply to the likes of Arsenal, who of course have Bayern Munich, and of course Liverpool. But with theirs being a Europa League game, I think they could probably manage the competition better than that of Arsenal and Man City. So for me, right now, if I look at the teams, Spurs are on there right now just because I have game week 34 earmarked to sell off my Spurs assets for those that double. Right now, I think you hold your Spurs assets at least for game week 32. And I think the likes of Pedro Porro could be sold in game week 33, but I wouldn't sell Son, as I think Newcastle's defence are really going to struggle against this Spurs team. Man City, we spoke about the return to Champions League. For me, I just think it's a case of you don't buy that assets right now because it's too risky. Man United, you only really buy them in game week 34 with that Sheffield United game, but I don't see a world where we go there when we have other teams that double. Brentford, I think, are an avoid, even though they have great single game week fixtures. And the rest of the teams, for me and my personal team, I'm already tripled up on Arsenal. I think Wolves is a great investment this week. Aït-Nouri is my top pick of the defenders, playing basically as a winger or forward. And you can also see Liverpool. I think the time to strike is any game week, to be honest with you. If you haven't done it already, Man United away is not a bad fixture at all, who are conceding shots for fun. So for me, right now, I have got my eyes on potentially a Wolves defender, an Everton goalkeeper, and that third Liverpool player. So looking ahead to game week 32, here's how my team is looking without any transfers. And of course, I'm hoping that overall rank will be a little bit better once we've had the Liverpool game and of course the Chelsea Man United one. But when we look at it on paper, I've got 0.2 million in the bank, one free transfer available. And yes, there are a few issues in the team, but on the whole, I'm pretty content with how the team is looking now. Dubravka away against Fulham, I think, is terrible. There's no world they keep a clean sheet. But realistically, when I look at the fixtures, there isn't really anybody I want to buy a park for from someone like Jordan Pickford. But I don't have the money available to upgrade him. Otherwise, I think that would be a move I definitely would make. And then I'm looking at -4s in order to accommodate someone like a Jordan Pickford, and I just can't do it. So Dubravka is going to stay in the team, but I do think his end in the team is coming very, very soon. Now, in terms of the defenders, Brighton away is not ideal for Arsenal at all, but if there is a defence that's going to keep a clean sheet, it's going to be Arsenal, really. So I'm happy to play both of those, and even from a set-piece perspective and goal scoring, they are still great options. I wouldn't play Zabanije, even though he is away against Luton. So I'm going for the double Arsenal defence. Pedro Porro's got one last chance in this team. I spoke about how game week 33 could be the time to sell him away against Newcastle, who aren't necessarily great, but they do score goals. So this is the last opportunity for Pedro Porro. I think with the wingers that Forest have, they could hurt Spurs in transitional moments. So I'm not expecting much, but if I could have a leaving gift of maybe a 10-pointer from Pedro Porro to reward my loyalty, I would be forever in debt. So I'm hoping that does happen. Now, looking at the midfield, again, I have no players here that I want to sell. Mo Salah, of course, is in for the long term. Son, there's no world I sell him at home against Nottingham Forest. Saka is in for the long term, unless we were to get an update from Arteta that maybe he is officially injured and could be a risk. Otherwise, he is staying in the team. And Cole Palmer away against Sheffield United. Again, no concerns with that at all. And in terms of the front three, Haaland away against Palace, I fully expect him to come straight back into the team. Darwin Núñez away against Man United, absolutely fine, as Solanke away against Luton. So the 11 looks great, and I don't really think this game week with one free transfer I can actually improve any of this team. So at the time recording, I'm actually just looking to roll the free transfer unless something comes up in the Liverpool or Chelsea game which requires me to sell one of those assets. Or maybe we get an update that maybe Saka is actually injured and could be a risk for the weekend. So rolling the transfer is currently the plan. And what I'm going to do now is show you my future plans up until my wildcard to give you a bit of an idea on what exactly I would do my 2 free transfers from game week 33 and beyond. In terms of captaincy this week, I'm currently on Erling Haaland. A little bit controversial, and I do feel like maybe I should put it on Son to reward the loyalty that I've put into him. But right now, I do think Haaland coming back into that City team could do really well against Palace. So here I have my current team for game week 32. Of course, I am using the Fantasy Football Fix Google Chrome extension on the official FPL site. Make sure you check it out. It's called FPL Plus. It's unbelievably good. So here's how the team's looking. As we discussed, I am right now most likely going to roll my transfer unless anything happens in tonight's game. So going into game week 33, my team would look like this. And again, we have a few issues. It's not ideal to have Pedro Porro away against Newcastle, and double Arsenal defence against Villa equally isn't great, but I'm just keeping them for the long term. So they're going to stay in the team. But the rest look fantastic. The front 7 that we have, I don't really think needs any change in. Again, Son could be a cash cow for the team, but I do think this Newcastle defence is there to be got at. And Son does have a monster haul in him, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was against Newcastle. So I don't want to get punished for selling Son like I did with Phil Foden. So right now at the time of recording, if I was to make a move around this time, I think I'd be looking to maybe sell Pedro Porro because, of course, I don't want to be wasting a transfer in my team. And I'll be looking to invest in a Wolves defender in the shape of Aït-Nouri. Now, he has been in unbelievable form recently. He should have actually had more points than he actually has accumulated. And when we took a look at the fixtures coming up for Aït-Nouri, I'll be bringing him in for the Forest away game, which isn't ideal. I would expect Wolves to concede, but the attacking potential that Aït-Nouri is offering, I think outweighs that clean sheet wipeout. And then we would have him in for the game week 34 double at home against Arsenal and at home against Bournemouth. Again, am I expecting much from Aït-Nouri? Not really, but I think the way that he's playing right now as a winger, I think justifies bringing him in the team. So all of a sudden my team would look like this. I wouldn't then have to burn my transfer. I think that's a good use for it. Yes, I would like to have a Liverpool defender, but I can't afford Virgil van Dijk. And with the return of Trent Alexander-Arnold, someone like a Conor Bradley is a major risk. So my team would look like this. Not ideal having Dubravka, but it is what it is. And it would give me 2 free transfers going into game week 34. And now it's all about how do I really maximize the most of this team. Now, of course, the doubles are okay. I'm already tripled up on Arsenal. I have 1 Liverpool spot remaining, and I do think someone like a Crystal Palace have some of the best fixtures. So my first move that I think I would make is selling Son for Eze. As long as he is fit, maybe Elise is a bit of a differential, and it would give me with a decent team and amount of doublers. So I'd have 1 more transfer available, and it needs to be said I would start Garnacho over Cole Palmer. So it's all about how do I maximise the most of my team. Goalkeeper transfer, maybe I could do Dubravka to Pickford, as I mentioned, and get that in. But realistically, with the fixtures, I think I might as well get a 3rd Liverpool player. The big question is, who is the guy that's going to play over both fixtures? Could be a defender, but I'm not going to be selling a defender now that I have those. I could bring in the goalkeeper, so if Alisson is back, maybe Alisson is the route to go for. Equally, could I sell Erling Haaland for a forward? I could, but there aren't any Liverpool forwards to buy as I already have Darwin Núñez. And am I going to really sell Haaland for a Mateta? Not really, because I think he could be a rotation risk in one of the two. So right now at the time recording, a move that I could make, and this is only if I was to get confirmation that he would start both, is maybe do something like a Diaz into my team for Garnacho, which again doesn't feel very good. And my team could look like this, with the only single game week as being Haaland and Dubravka. Equally, I could just keep Garnacho in the team and sell Dubravka for the Liverpool goalkeeper and get myself some coverage in what will be a highly owned defence. So that is the move right now. And then going into game week 35, of course, this will be the week where I wildcard, and I will prepare myself for that, hopefully for a strong end to the season. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's game week 32 transfer plans video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How are you getting on in game week 31 right now? Did you sell Phil Foden? And what are your current transfers? For me, rolling the transfer makes a lot of sense, and I'm hoping there are no injuries tonight. As always, make sure you do drop a like on the video and smash the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.